Hello, this is Mike Evans, author, speaker, and consultant. Just let me provide a real brief background of my experience in this industry over 25 years of working alongside some of the world's most well respected thought leaders in the areas of change, execution, leadership, accountability, and creating peak performing cultures. I've had the chance to work alongside folks such as Dr. John Cotter, Stephen Covey, Tom Peters, Jim Kouzes, Steve Farber, and others. 31 of 50 Fortune clients I have had the opportunity to work with. And I've worked with companies around the globe and in virtually every arena from the tech sector to financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, hospitality, entertainment, retail, and government agencies. The focus of my work is primarily in the areas of flawless execution of key strategies, igniting leadership capacity at all levels, amplifying employee engagement, unleashing personal and organizational accountability, helping organizations and individuals thrive and excel in the age of disruption, and helping individuals embrace the role of CEO of their life, career, and destiny. As we look at the slide from Charles Darwin, a statement attributed to Charles Darwin, it's not the strongest of the species that survives nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. That applies to individuals, teams, and organizations. Complacency can be very dangerous. Why is leading change and flawless execution such a key focus area and topic for organizations around the globe at this time? We've discovered there's a myriad of potential reasons. And as you look at this list, some may stand out to you and to your colleagues as to why you want to build more capacity around those key topics of leading change and flawless execution. The four that we hear most often from our clients are these: increased competition, a drive to find new markets and new customers, the fact that customers have more choices, and commoditization. There's a lot of similarity out there. What can we do to become distinctive and stand out in a sea of sameness? In this new world of work, it used to be that the big ate the small. Now it's the fast that eat the slow. Organizations, individuals, and teams that are agile, that embrace change, that adapt, that innovate, that grow will continue to thrive and excel in the new world of work. If we tend to fight change, if we don't embrace change, we're in a very precarious and dangerous position. Jack Welch said this years ago: organizations cannot be tentative. Excuses like channel conflict or marketing and sales aren't ready simply cannot be allowed. Delaying you risk being cut out of your own market, perhaps not by traditional competitors, but by companies you may not have heard of 24 months ago. And this statement came out years ago, but it's so relevant today in this age of disruption. Think about that statement as it relates to what Amazon.com did to all the small mom and pop bookstores years ago. They put them out of business. They reinvented the industry. And there's a lot of examples like that that exist today. Here's three well-known companies that are often talked about in this day and age. These used to be leading companies in their industries. They were emulated. Organizations wanted to benchmark these companies, and yet they no longer exist. The primary reasons, if you look and peel back the layers of the onion as to what the real issues were with these companies and why they failed, there's six primary reasons. We need to avoid these as individuals, as teams, as departments, and organizations, or we're in real jeopardy of becoming the next Blockbuster, the next Kodak, or the next Nokia. These organizations were short-term focused. They had too much of an inward focus, trying to tinker and get better at everything they did, which they did exceptionally well, but they didn't have enough of an external focus to constantly be looking for opportunities and possibilities, as well as challenges and potential hazards. They were very complacent and they clung to the status quo. They had too much of an emphasis on managing their organizations versus leading their organizations. And what we mean by that is the management side is really focused on handling, scheduling, budgeting, resourcing, those sorts of things. Leadership is about inspiring, visioning, engaging, motivating, strategizing. And in the most successful organizations, there's a 75% focus on leading and 25% on managing. Both are necessary, but we need to make sure, especially in this day and age, that there's a higher emphasis on leading. These organizations were mostly reactive instead of proactive and very much averse to risk. We would suggest that there are forces that have coalesced and come together, and these forces are gunning to take away your job as an individual. They're looking to displace your department, and they're coming to reinvent or destroy your industry. When you look at this seven-sided pincer movement, which is a term we coined to refer to this force, think about the impact ERP and SAP has had on the economy and certainly in the workforce. Hundreds of thousands of jobs eliminated over the past 10 to 20 years because of software. White collar robots. Think about cash machines, ATM machines, lights out warehousing, and the impact that has had upon employment and the economy. Globalization, location no longer matters. There's an abundance of talent that's only a mouse click away. Outsourcing, often better, faster, and cheaper. The internet has had dramatic impact, significant impact. Banking is necessary, banks are not. Shopping and retail is necessary, but malls and stores are not. On and on the list goes. Disruptive and destructive competition. Think about the impact Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, Amazon has had upon so many organizations and so many industries. And finally, artificial intelligence. And we're just at the precipice of the impact AI is going to have upon the economy worldwide. So, what is our defense in this age of disruption? What can we do to ward off this seven sided pincer movement? We believe there are five key elements that we need to be focused on and very cognizant of in order to accomplish that. The first of those five is generating lots of great ideas and flawlessly executing those ideas so that that propels us to a better place than where we are today. Implementing those ideas with speed, tapping into the talent that resides and is often left untapped within our organizations. How do we become very distinctive in what we would call a sea of sameness in today's economy? And how do we draw out the leadership capacity that's necessary from every single person within our organization? We would say that is the kryptonite to the seven-sided pincer movement. When we think about exemplary leadership practices when it comes to flawlessly executing strategies, the key five best practices of exemplary leadership are modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. It's critical that folks at every levels, especially at senior levels and mid-management, understand what each of these fives includes and incorporates, as well as building bench strength at every level of our organization. In the new world of work, in today's age of disruption, the skills that are on decline, if you look at the list that's here, as we have done our research, a lot of the skills that are listed here are not as necessary as they were in years past. The skills that will prevail in this new world of work, as you look at this list, you will notice it's more about leadership and interpersonal skills. And that's what it will take to engage our workforce, to get them to be connected to the work that we do, to voluntarily tap into their discretionary performance area and go above and beyond what's required to help us achieve what's most important and what will propel us to a better place than where we sit today. Winston Churchill said years ago that it's of no use saying we have done our best. We've got to succeed in doing what's necessary. What are the results that we absolutely have to achieve? What are the strategies that we have to flawlessly execute that will propel us to a better place than where we are today? What's fascinating is we have found over 20 plus years of working with organizations around the globe that 90% of the time, those that report to us are not crystal clear on the outcomes, the results, or the strategies that we want them to help us achieve with excellence, flawlessly execute, what we want them to take accountability, ownership, and become engaged to help us achieve. When we don't have that level of clarity, it always leads to some degree of confusion, which inevitably leads to misunderstandings. Misunderstandings lead to miscommunication. Miscommunication leads to degrees of mistrust and distrust within an organization, resulting in what we call isolation, where folks tend to focus on just doing their quote unquote job. And that degree of commitment, which we would actually call compliance, is not enough to get us to where we need to be or to flawlessly execute any strategy. There's a lot of root causes that can lead to that level of lack of clarity. Here's a list of 8 or 9. There's a lot of others, but we need to make sure that we're looking at these and we're addressing these, because folks need to, at every level, need to know exactly what's most important to our organization so that they can make a conscious choice as to what they can do on a daily basis to help us achieve it. When we achieve that degree of clarity, it creates a mindset where folks come to work every day engaged, accountable, taking ownership. They feel they're playing a winnable game. They're coming to work every day to win versus playing not to lose. Too often in organizations, folks come to work feeling like they're just trying to keep their head above water. They're not quite sure what's most important. So they focus on activity rather than the results that we want them to help us achieve. The highest standard, we would say, that a leader can aspire to achieve is that. Do your people believe they are playing a winnable game? Are they completely focused, passionate, engaged, and dedicated, taking accountability and ownership to help achieve what matters most? Or are they just even a little bit confused or unclear and focusing just on activity instead of results? We would suggest that collaboration, engagement, flawless execution, esprit de corps, ownership, and accountability begin with clearly defined desired results, the outcomes we have to achieve, the strategies we have to flawlessly execute. And when it comes to execution, it's really the leader's responsibility and accountability to deliver the results that are most important to that organization. And the primary reason a leader no longer gets to be a leader is because they don't produce the results that they're being counted on to deliver. And when it comes to those results, there are things a leader can't control and things you can control. And it's a very quick downward spiral into the abyss if we focus on what we can't control. When it comes to what we can control, it's our strategies and our ability to flawlessly execute on those strategies. How do we successfully run the play and deliver the outcomes that we're being counted on to deliver? When we consider strategies, we would suggest there are 2 types of strategies. The first we call stroke of the pen strategies. If you have the authority and you have the budget, these are going to happen. It could be a change in your medical coverage, it could be a change in payroll, it could be a strategic acquisition. But if you have the authority and you have the budget, these are strategies that you can basically stroke of the pen and say this is just the way it's going to be in the future. The second type of strategy are the really tough ones. These are the strategies that we would call behavioral change strategies, where they may not only require some change in behavior, but change in habit. These are very tough strategies. And if you look at the list, there's some examples of what a behavioral change strategy would look like. Behavioral change strategies require people to think, act, and behave differently. Over 23 years of working with leaders around the globe, we have found when it comes to strategy and execution, the area that most struggle with most is execution. Most leaders go to school or get an MBA, they're focused on strategy and developing strategies. The execution part, getting people to voluntarily engage, commit, have ownership, passion, and engagement, that's the difficult part for most leaders. We have found also that many leaders attempt to stroke of the pen a behavioral change strategy. We call that compliance. And if you're looking to accomplish something significant or important, it often takes high doses of commitment, engagement, ownership, and accountability to achieve what matters most. We would suggest the most difficult challenge a leader will face is driving a strategy that requires other people to voluntarily choose to change their behavior. The interesting and funny thing is that you don't hear leaders coming in, driving into work one morning saying to themselves, boy, I wish I was better at driving a strategy that required behavioral change. Instead, what you often hear them say is, I wish I didn't have Mary, Joe, and Sam, and Pete on my team. But if you're the leader of an organization, your mandate and your job is to flawlessly execute the strategies that move the organization forward. Edwards Deming had this to say years ago. Anytime the majority of the people behave a particular way the majority of the time, the problem isn't with the people. It's with the strategies, the processes, or the systems, and the leader has to own that. When it comes to execution, for 18 years, we looked and studied execution. And why is it that so many strategies fail to be flawlessly executed? And we looked at a lot of things. First thing we looked at was clarity. Does everybody even understand or know where we have to go or what we're trying to accomplish? Then we looked at commitment. If they know where we're going, do they even care? Then translation was an issue. If they do know where we're going and they're committed, can they make the link between what they do and how it contributes to helping us achieve the strategies and the outcomes that we have to accomplish? Then accountability. Are folks going to take personal accountability to help us achieve what matters most? Then we looked at cross functional collaboration. Are we hiring the right people? Are we giving them the right training? Did we implement the appropriate work processes? Do we have the right IT systems? On and on and on the list went. We had ultimately 14 or 15 different areas that we looked at. And then it dawned on us as we looked at this further and deeper and realized that there was really one major reason why most strategies are not flawlessly executed. And it's the whirlwind, it's the day job. Folks are so busy, focused on what they need to accomplish daily, caught up in the minutia of everything we need to do to keep the operation humming, that it can sidetrack us and prevent us from accomplishing what matters most. So on one side, we have the whirlwind, that everything we need to do daily to keep the operation humming, really the lifeline of the organization, keeping things going, keeping the lights on, paying the bills. And on the other side, we have the goals or the new strategies that we must flawlessly execute to continually thrive and get better and move forward in any organization. These two forces are completely different and they don't like each other. There's a rubber conflict between both. On the left-hand side, you have the whirlwind. It's urgent activities, and it acts on you. On the right-hand side, we have our new goals and the results we have to achieve, and those are critically important, but you have to act on those. Think about this. If you didn't have to implement anything new, no new strategies, no new results, no new goals to go after, would your folks still be busy? Absolutely, they would. They'd be caught up in that whirlwind, keeping the operation humming. The trick is, how do we implement and flawlessly execute a strategy in the midst of a 100-mile-an-hour whirlwind? So we have to introduce one other concept, and we'll get into some of the principles of flawless execution. We call it moving the middle. When you look at this typical bell-shaped curve that's on the screen here, there are three distinct groups. We have what we call our nevers, our maybes, and our models. And on average, in any given organization, you have about 20% of your folks who fall into the never category. They will never, ever help you achieve anything of significance. In the middle, we have the maybes. These are the folks who are on the fence. They could go either way. And then you have your models, about 20% of your organization, typically willing to walk on broken glass for you to help you achieve what matters most. Too often, the mistake is we tend to focus on the nevers and look to move those into the maybe or the model category. The reason we call that group the nevers is because they will never, ever, ever help you achieve anything worthwhile or significant. Our suggestion is don't waste a brain cell on that group of folks. All of your opportunity and potential is with that middle section, the maybes, the 60% who could go either way. And if you can get that group involved and engaged, it has a significant impact on helping you achieve what matters most and helping you flawlessly execute the strategies that will propel you into a better place in the future. So let's talk a little bit about the change leadership map, or sometimes we call it the strategy map. And then we'll get into some details on how through this process we build agility, resiliency, and accountability and get folks completely engaged to help you achieve what matters most. Secondly, how do we bolster leadership capability and dynamism at all levels? And thirdly, how do we build the skills and capabilities at every level to achieve what matters most? When you look at this change leadership map or the strategy map, organizations typically have a mission or a reason to be. Why do we exist? And then we have a vision of what that will look like when it's achieved. And then there's a roadmap or the strategies we put in place to lead us to the vision and ultimately deliver on the mission. The strategies, we talked about one type of strategy already, which is stroke of the pen, that if you have the authority and you have the budget, these are strategies that will be implemented because you say so. Then we have what we call the whirlwind. It's the daily work that we're focused on to keep the engine humming and keep the operation running. We track things like financials and employee results, operational results, customer results. And then the third element is the behavioral change strategies. And those are the tough ones. Those are the strategies that are going to require people to voluntarily to choose to change their behavior or even habit in order for us to flawlessly execute strategies that move us forward. The first principle when it comes to flawlessly executing strategies is about focusing on the wildly important. What are the top one, two, or three things that if we flawlessly execute will help us get to a better place in the future? And we want to narrow the focus above the whirlwind. So we have to maintain the operation, the left side of this diagram, the whirlwind. We can't let that go. It's critically important. It's what made us successful up to this point. But in order to move forward in the future, there are always going to be new things that we have to accomplish to thrive and excel in this new world of work. That's where we want to narrow the focus. Here's one way to think about this. If you look at the diagram on the screen here, at the top, we have the number of goals in addition to maintaining the whirlwind, the number of goals that we want to accomplish, and then at the bottom, goals achieved with excellence. If we're setting out to achieve 2 or 3 strategic goals and execute them flawlessly, we're pretty well set up to achieve that 2 or 3. Now, if we bump that number up to 4 or 10, what do we typically see happen? Will we accomplish and flawlessly execute the 4 to 10? No, actually, what we see most of the time is that number drops to 1 or 2. And if we beef that number up to 11 to 20, what happens? We don't achieve any of those. We diffuse our focus and our effort and our concentration. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. In fact, in this scenario, 11 to 20, everything becomes a big blur to everybody in your organization. We need to focus on what is most important at this point in time. What's the window of opportunity that if we achieve these 2 or 3 now, will put us in a better place in the future? And then, because those 11 to 20 ideas that are there, most of those are good ideas, but we can't execute on everything at one time. So once we nail one of the 2 or 3 that we initially choose, we pull some of the other good ideas depending upon which ones are most appropriate and relevant given the circumstances that you're confronted with at that particular time. There will always be more good ideas than there is capacity to execute. We can't execute on everything at the same time. There's a couple of focus traps. One is saying yes to all of the good ideas, and then the second is turning everything in the whirlwind into a goal. We want to focus on what are the new goals and strategies that we know if we achieve these will put us in a better position to have ongoing success into the future. On the left side, we have the whirlwind. It's the day job. It's the day-to-day activity that keeps the operation humming, keeps the lights on. You can't ignore that. You can't let it go. On the right side, we have the goals or the new activities. That's where we want to focus. That's where we want to create a strong level of a commitment, engagement, ownership, and accountability so that folks help us achieve what matters most. The left side, the whirlwind, it's about sustaining what we're already doing. The right side is determining what are the most critical strategies that we have to flawlessly execute that have a significant impact on the organization. So when we go back to this bell-shaped curve and we overlay the 4 principles of execution on top of it, principle 1 is all about, in its simplest terms, creating focus, creating pristine focus and clarity around what's most important to the organization and why. Principle 2 is all about leverage. And for the most part, what we mean by leverage is how do we get a focus on lead measures that actually lead us, that are predictive and influenceable, that lead us to the outcomes that we want to accomplish. It's lead measures versus lag measures. The leads end up resulting in the lag measures that are most important. Principle 3 is all about engagement. How do we get our workforce at every single level to be engaged, committed, and taking personal accountability to help us accomplish? And principle 4 is about accountability. How do we create a cadence of accountability so that folks at all levels voluntarily choose to take personal accountability to help us achieve what matters most? So let's talk a little bit about accountability and how do we cultivate a culture of accountability at all levels. If you take a look at the model that's on the screen, you'll see there are 3 distinct parts to the model. In the middle of the model, there's a pool of water, And below the water, you have the 7 categories into which all blame falls into one of those categories. When somebody is below, not just somebody, but a team or an organization is below the water or playing the blame game, this is where their mind's at. They're focused on everything they cannot control, like an anchor holding the organization back, blaming others, stuck, frozen in their action. They're missing every opportunity to move forward, but the primary thinking down below the water playing the blame game is this: it's not my fault or our fault, and there's nothing we can do about it. When folks or teams or individuals are above the water, completely engaged in taking the accountability, taking the keys to accountability, the mindset's different. They're focused on everything they can control. They're like an engine propelling the organization forward. They're engaged, they're resolute, focused on what matters most. They're dedicated, and they're finding solutions around every obstacle. The primary thinking above the water is the mindset of what else can I do? Teams and individuals and organizations that consistently achieve and exceed what matters most tend to manifest that mindset. What else can we do to get to the result that we have to achieve, even if somebody put us in a difficult circumstance? So, the 4 keys to accountability are recognizing our current reality. What's the big picture? What's the reality that we're in? And then taking complete ownership. What have we done or not done to put ourselves in this situation? And then creating a solution, finding a way forward, and then exercising action or implementing the plan. When organizations embrace the principles of flawless execution, we find that we move from externalizing the need to change to internalizing the need for change at every level, from blaming others or other people or other things to taking personal accountability, from doing our quote unquote job to achieving the result, a much higher focus on results versus activity, from working in silos to true collaboration, and from telling people what to do to truly engaging the hearts and minds of our employees at every single level. So we started off talking about the 7-sided pincer movement, and there they are again. What's the defense? Well, as we discussed, with the process and the principles included in what we've discussed here today, execution, leadership, and accountability, we are able to quickly develop new ideas that will move us into a better place in the future, implement them and flawlessly execute them with speed, tap into the talent that resides at every level of every organization, becoming distinctive to stand out in a sea of sameness, and drawing out leadership capacity at all levels of our organization. I'll leave you with a few closing remarks. First, leadership is a choice. You don't have to have a title. You don't have to have a business card or sit in a fancy office to be a leader. Leadership is a choice no matter where you reside in any given organization. And remember this, we are all being watched. Everything we do, every shrug of your shoulder, every blink of your eye is sending signals to those around you. What are you doing to model the way and lead in a manner to engage others to accomplish what matters most? Thank you for the opportunity to provide this quick overview of some of the work that we do in the area of execution, leadership, and creating a culture of accountability. We'd welcome the opportunity to learn more about your needs and your focus areas, and to answer any questions you may have about our work and the processes that we provide and equip our clients with. I wish you all the best. Live and lead accountably.